Cortisol devastation. Absolutely something that many people need to be concerned about. Stress is everywhere, and we thought that this would be a good topic for today's podcast. World events going on right now. And all three of us as doctors have been in situations where we've seen people who are getting very stressed from looking at events on the mainstream media. Some people get sucked in more than others. And it's important in this sort of situation, whether we're talking about the set of world events over the last few days or in general, to remember the absolute devastation that cortisol can cause on anybody's body and how it's so important in today's world where we have 24/7 news, especially, to take a step back. So we've all got a lot to say on this topic and we want to impart some wisdom on you as well. So Dr. Ben, I know you wanted to go first.
Yes, indeed. No, this is a big topic I like talking about. This is about positive and negative thinking and the repercussions of that. When you surround yourself with negative thinking, when you allow yourself to take in all that negativity and all that stress, it will affect your body and it will begin to affect your body in pretty powerful ways. We do know that high stress causes high cortisol levels, which can lead to multiple conditions. It can lead to high blood pressure. It can lead to anxiety. It can lead to depression. I see this happening in my office all the time. I have people coming in after a devastating news cycle. Something traumatic has happened in the world, and people can't stop watching. They watch hours and hours, and it wreaks havoc on the body and the mind.
It does. And this is something close to your heart as well, Dr. Peter, no pun intended.
No, that's so true. And so we know that just in general, like acute cortisol, is a protective mechanism of the body. And that's kind of the fight or flight response where in immediate danger, our blood pressure goes up, cortisol levels go up, and that's how we adapt. But it's a chronic elevation of cortisol. And that's really where stress and problems begin. And so I always say it's really not like the big events. Always, it's really like the daily drip or the chronic stress. But these, of course, we've had a lot of big daily events in the world. And I think that really has gotten people's cortisol up. And we know that circulating cortisol really wreaks havoc on the body. And we know that it has metabolic effects. It has a cardiovascular impact. It affects the brain and the whole sleep connection and how people sleep. We know that cortisol increases inflammation in the body. That causes increase in blood pressure. And as a cardiologist, what I worry about is that increases the risk of heart disease.
It does, yeah. And there's so much out there to get worked up about. I've seen over the years, even just thinking of events like US elections, I remember after the 2020 election, people were coming into the hospital with chest pain who had got dragged into it. And I'm not saying that it's not important. Of course, it's important. But the question is it that important that you would let it get to your health and start getting chest pain and cardiac complaints? But I do think that there's a much broader discussion about what 24/7 news and constant alerts on your phone. Because when I was growing up in the UK, I had the privilege of meeting a lot of people who lived through the Blitz. They actually remembered very clearly London being bombed like anything. And from what they were telling me, I think people back then were more calm in much worse situations than today because they did not have the mainstream news. They would read the newspaper, they'd get an alert. This is something that we should really talk about. And everybody out there, whether you find yourself worked up about events recently or not, should think about what it means for your health if you are the type of person who's glued to your screen and the algorithm is sending you stuff that is going to push your buttons.
I completely agree with you. I think what's changed, the biggest thing that's changed from that time to this one, traumatic events in the world aren't going to stop. And they haven't changed that dramatically. There's still war, there's still attacks. What's changed is the bombardment with 24/7 news and this idea that it is okay to scare entire populations over and over and over again, all day long, all night long. And they create what's almost like an addictive news feed so that you keep watching, you stay glued to the TV, and we don't talk enough about what does that do to your body and your mind. I hear all the time, I'm so glad Dr. Peter brought up not being able to sleep. What I hear all the time is I can't shut it off. I can't stop the wheels from spinning. That's such a common thing that I hear when people say they have insomnia and can't sleep. And that has made 100, 1,000 times worse by being stuck listening to these news cycles. I mean, if you scare someone all day long, how do you shut that off?
Well, that's so true, Ben. And we do know just from a biochemical process that how addictive this is, and what we call like as doom scrolling, where we are much more engaged. And I think we probably confuse engagement with empowerment. I mean, we're overly inundated with a lot of news, and so we know that bad news will trigger cortisol levels, and that causes a cortisol spike. We know that when you check these updates on the news and you're scrolling, it kind of gives you a little bit of a little small dopamine reward, and that your brain kind of links that as a reward, and you get a little bit of a bump in dopamine in your brain, and that's really what reinforces this compulsive consumption of news and keeps scrolling. And that's why it becomes so addictive. And you're right, these algorithms with the news, it seems like it's hitting us off and on and continuously now. And it's hard to escape it. I think that's the biggest thing right now with social media too, is that you can't escape it. And so really you have to learn how to shut it down, because necessarily, like, as again, engagement doesn't always mean that like it's better. It's good to keep up with the news, but again, you need to have some break from it.
You do. And a broader topic on how to deal with it. I know Dr. Ben has talked about this before, about switching off. Now, I'm not suggesting, as I'm sure you wouldn't suggest either, that you don't care what's happening in the world. Lives are on the line. Maybe you have family in the military as well. Not saying that you don't care for it, especially if it affects you closely. But I think millions of people get sucked into these events, which actually aren't even directly affecting them. And there hasn't been a time in history that there hasn't been war. I mean, sadly, that's what human beings do very well, is fight with each other, especially that region of the world. So the question is, how do you deal with it? And I always advise people to really limit social media time, limit cable TV. One of the best things I did was cancel my cable TV a couple of years ago. Don't have it, don't have to watch the news and the constant pharma ads as well. But I really do limit how much I interact with the news, and I'll switch my phone off for hours during the day, certain amounts of time. So I'm not definitely don't have alerts on my phone, but I'm very cognizant also because I'm a huge fan of Stoicism as a philosophy of distinguishing between things that you control and things that you don't control, because far too many people are spending the majority of their mental energy on things they have zero control over. And on so many levels, I know it's tough to do because we're all humans, that is a complete waste of your time and energy if you find yourself spending time on things you have zero control over.
So what I like about Stoicism, it's about controlling what you can and letting things not exactly go, but not letting them get to you in such a powerful way. It's a fascinating philosophy, and you've certainly adopted it, Dr. Sunil, and I strongly agree with it. And I strongly agree with people developing that attitude of, even though all these horrible things are happening and they're very real and we want to know as much as we can about them, we have to learn how to not let them get inside and begin to make us sick. And that's what this does, this constant barrage of news and horrible things. That's what it does to our bodies.
It does. And I would say there's no condition out there which doesn't have a link to stress. I mean, I see this all the time in the hospital, every condition, even infections. I'll often delve into things with whoever's admitted and I'm seeing, and I'll say, look, can you think of anything that started this off? And they'll say, oh, you know what, doc? Yeah, 4 weeks ago, this happened and I've been so stressed. I haven't been myself, taking care of myself. And it's just such a strong link with the immune system feeling stressed. And this is not talked about. Shingles, that's a huge one.
Oh, that's a huge one.
Yeah, people get a traumatic event and then break out in shingles. This needs to be talked about more, but especially from the heart perspective, which I know you'll have a few things to talk about, Dr. Peter, the heart and how it just is the first organ to get affected by stress.
So the problem now is when you turn on the news and you get up in the morning, our bodies are not really adapted to absorbing all the world's crises in the time where we're eating breakfast. And we know that that's the time when cortisol levels are the highest, early morning hours. We know that cortisol level increases blood pressure, increases inflammation. And what it really does, and why, this is probably the most common reason why the heart is probably the organ that's most affected by it, is a rupture of plaque. And so we know that increased cortisol causes dysfunction of the arteries, and people who normally have some minimal plaque in the artery can rupture. And like a volcano, it can cause a complete occlusion of a blood vessel. And that's what we have to really worry about is just this chronic stress. Again, it's the inundation that are things that are out of our control. And I don't mean to disengage, but there are things that are relevant. One thing you have to ask, if it's not within my control, why am I allowing this to dictate kind of how my health is? And I think the best take home message is get out there, remove yourself from stress that's not going to be directly affecting you or one that's beyond your control.
Yeah, very well said. And it's a sea change for humanity because for most of history, people only used to worry about what they could see and what was affecting them. They wouldn't get news from anywhere else. And I think in a way that was a blessing. So yes, we can all stay informed, but our advice to you is to take this seriously. If you find yourself stressed about world events or indeed any event, if you can't immediately deal with it or solve it, understand that those cortisol and adrenaline levels are going to affect every single organ system, especially your heart. And at the end of the day, nothing is more important than your health and well-being. And if you want the world to be a better place, as they say, the best thing to do is to do good things yourself. And if you're going to do good things yourself, you have to be well. So that would be the final thing to say. We hope you've enjoyed this discussion. Stay well, everyone. Do check in the links down below for our natural health and well-being store. We are very proud of our expanding store and our uniquely crafted products, all based on ingredients that we strongly believe in. So do check that out. ohiwellness.com if you're in the USA, North America, ohiwellness.co if you're in the UK, Europe. Take care, everyone. We'll speak next time.